We introduce you to Wyoming in this video, which you can see on the map right here. Our target is Yellowstone National Park, primarily located in Wyoming's upper left corner that also extends into Idaho and Montana. Yellowstone covers 3,472 square miles, nearly the same area as Puerto Rico, and scientists have uncovered some complex findings that might affect everything about the national treasure. Stay tuned as we bring you these incredible discoveries. On March 1, 1872, Yellowstone was designated as the first national park in the world, established around 20 years before Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana had become U.S. states. The Yellowstone National Park Protection Act, signed into law by President Ulysses S. Grant, safeguarded more than 2 million acres of mountain wilderness, magnificent geysers, and vivid landscapes for future generations to enjoy. When the first visitors to Yellowstone attempted to report on what they saw, news publications said, "Thank you, but we do not publish fiction." Their suspicion was well-founded since the attributes were too incredible to be genuine. From colorful hot springs to mud pots and breathtaking waterfalls, Yellowstone must be seen to be believed. Yellowstone is unlike anything else on the planet, and it has something that will fascinate everyone, from youngsters to the elderly. As a result, Yellowstone National Park, established in 1872 and primarily located in Wyoming, is one of the country's most popular national parks. Yellowstone National Park is built on top of a dormant supervolcano that might erupt with a magnitude of 8. Some portions of the park are only 3 miles above molten rock or lava. As a result, there are more geysers and hot springs in the park than anywhere else. There are many sights to see in this unique national park, including the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone and fauna such as America's largest buffalo herd, grizzly bears, and wolves. Yellowstone National Park has over half of the world's hydrothermal features, generating an effect that makes the Earth appear to be on fire. The most well-known of all the geysers is Old Faithful, one of the most famous and recognized natural marvels in the United States. Yellowstone was named from the golden sandstone found around the Yellowstone River by Native Americans. The brilliant yellow colors visible in the Yellowstone Grand Canyon are sometimes assumed to be the source of Yellowstone's name. While Yellowstone is awe-inspiring, there are also frightening aspects to the national park. We'll start with the first one, which is better imagined than experienced. It's enough to make you squirm just thinking about it. The vibrant colors of Yellowstone's hot springs make them fascinating to see and photograph, but what happens if a visitor falls into one? Before we proceed further, let us state unequivocally that swimming in any hot spring is not a good idea. We're solely interested in how awful a concept it is. The volcano caldera sits atop one of the world's most considerable lava masses, powered by an upwelling plume of superheated material. Because of the dynamic and violent subsurface plumbing, the water bodies near the surface, such as the numerous geysers and springs, are highly acidic, scorching, and lethal to animal life. In 2016, one unhappy individual chose to disregard several warnings posted across Yellowstone and dipped his finger into one of the park's many hot springs. That was a wrong decision. He not only fell in and died, but he also entirely disintegrated within 24 hours. But at the same time, we can guarantee you that it was a wrong decision. When he fell into the water, what exactly happened to his body? The first thing that sprang to mind was that his body felt like he was soaking in water roughly 93 degrees Celsius. It would hurt like nothing you've ever experienced before, but only for as long as his neurological system could sense pain, which wouldn't be more than a minute or two, depending on how you look at it. The epidermis of late visitor's skin immediately broke down and disintegrated at this temperature. His blood vessels in the underlying dermis would break shortly after, resulting in blood loss. Instead of breaking down, specific underlying skin layers lost all of their water and became leathery and darkened. His underlying subcutaneous fat would soon burst to the surface, exposing him to all. It was a full-thickness burn that took less than a minute to occur. His nervous system went into shock and the damage was permanent. His organs had begun to fail at this time, even though the tremendous heat stress had already shut down several of them. The acidity of the water takes control entirely when death occurs in 2 to 3 minutes. Some of the hot springs are somewhat alkaline, but several, including the one that the tourist fell into at Norris Geyser Basin, are highly acidic, with pH values of approximately 2. The lower the number, the more acidic the solution becomes. Even the skeleton has little chance against high acidity levels and hot temperatures. The guest vanished into oblivion after only a few hours beneath the ocean. Now that was startling, but there's more to come. One of Yellowstone's most popular attractions is no longer so reliable. It may shut down completely. Researching the park's most popular visitor feature since 1970, Rick Hutchinson complained that Old Faithful is slowing down. One day it could just cease for good, he warned. Mr. Hutchinson noted in the 1990s that the average delay when he arrived in 1970 was 66 minutes. It is currently 77 minutes. Our prediction had a plus or minus 5-minute margin in the 1970s. Presently, it has a plus or minus 10-minute margin. The geyser's reputation for dependability dates back at least 150 years when it was initially called Old Faithful by members of an expedition led by Montana Surveyor General Henry Washburn and Montana politician and businessman Nathaniel Langford. According to geologist Ferdinand Hayden, Old Faithful has been dubbed the Valley's Guardian, who conducted a later scientific trip in 1871. Its actions occur so regularly that it has provided remarkable observational facilities. However, many of the geyser's longtime visitors may be unaware of the exact balance of heat and water necessary to keep the geyser ejecting a fountain of hot water and steam from its sophisticated subsurface plumbing daily. So what's the issue with the old standby? Well, the geyser has been inactive for hundreds of years, mostly likely owing to a problem with the water component of the equation. The geyser ceased to erupt around the conclusion of the so-called medieval climactic anomaly, during which many parts of the planet experienced protracted periods of warm, dry weather. When things like grapes bloom in northern England and sea ice melts, allowing humans to find Greenland, said Kathy Whitlock, a paleoclimatologist at Montana State University in Bozeman. We know it was both warmer and drier in Yellowstone. The top tree line was higher up at the slopes at the time, and there were indications of other fires. Nevertheless, extreme droughts in the region continued for decades, and stream flows were significantly reduced. Researchers have also discovered that changes in the ground induced by earthquakes might affect geyser eruption intervals. It's most likely one of the reasons why Old Faithful now bursts every 94 minutes on average, as opposed to 60 to 65 minutes in the 1950s. Now, on the other hand, researchers discovered no indication of considerable seismic activity during the dormant phase of Old Faithful. As a result, they found that the dry climate most likely caused the pause. Droughts have struck the Yellowstone region once more, most likely due to human-caused global warming. A group of scientists presented a report in 2008 suggesting that years with decreased precipitation towards the close of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st century possibly added a minute or two to the eruption cycle of Old Faithful. If the environment continues to dry out, the geyser may entirely shut down. However, if you intend on visiting Yellowstone to soak in the majesty of the Old Faithful before it dries up, be aware that there will be earthquakes. It's because the national park is subjected to several earthquakes daily. It's hardly surprising given how seismically active the Yellowstone area is. However, how often do earthquakes strike the park? Yellowstone has between 1,500 and 2,000 earthquakes every year, on average over a long period. To better comprehend this average, let's look at statistics from the previous decade from 2010 to 2019. The University of Utah seismograph stations, UUSS, detected 17,243 earthquakes in the Yellowstone region during 3,652 days. It results in an average daily amount of 4.7 earthquakes, or once every 5.1 hours. However, because around half of these occurrences occur in swarms, they are not relatively dispersed throughout time, averaging 3.9 quakes per day or every 6.2 hours. However, scientists do not even track every earthquake in Yellowstone or anywhere else. The number and location of seismometers in a seismic network region are closely proportional to the capacity to record and locate an earthquake. When an earthquake occurs, seismic energy spreads out in all directions, but the intensity decreases as it moves away from the source. An earthquake must be recorded on at least 4 stations to determine its location and time of origin. As a result, it's challenging to record and pinpoint extremely tiny earthquakes if you don't have a dense seismic array, since you can't sufficiently record small earthquakes on enough stations. In addition, the energy from such minor quakes evaporates too quickly for the seismic network to capture them. In recent years, the most significant earthquake was a magnitude of 4.8 that struck the Norris Geyser Basin in March 2014, causing widespread damage. So in the comments box below, let us know if you're still excited to visit Yellowstone.